3, a number that carries a timeless, almost magical significance. The perfect number that symbolizes harmony, equity, equilibrium, and transformation, past, present, and future. But in the field I'm working in transplantation, number 3 carries a much deeper, much more profound meaning. Death, rebirth, life, and everything in between. Today I'm going to share with you 3 interconnected stories. Stories that speak of unspoken words that we hardly put in paper. Because sometimes the most powerful moments in life are the ones that we do not write about. The first story is about an 8-year-old girl called Kira. Kira was a wonderful, loving, and caring child. She had 2 older siblings and a younger brother. And whenever they squabbled over last sweets, she always gave hers away. She was a very thoughtful young girl. Then one day, in an instant, she was gone. A road traffic accident. A call that no parent should ever receive. A hospital room filled with silence and beeping machines. This is a tragedy. We can't even begin to comprehend the pain of losing a child. How does one put that into words? How does one translate that grief into anything that's meaningful? But more importantly, how does one transgress that grief and is able to think beyond that to something that is meaningful to the greater community? It takes a lot of courage. When Kira's dad was asked about organ donation, he agreed to it. He did so because he knew what kind of child Kira was. She loved, she cared, she gave. So he thought that even in death, she wanted to give something. But let me ask you here, all of you, how many of you would have taken his position? How many of you would have gone down that route in that difficult moment? How many of us think about our views, what we want to do? Let alone for our children who we very rarely or never want to lose. These are difficult conversations that never get spoken. We go through life like we are invincible, consumed by every day. And we avoid the inevitable because death is a taboo discussion. Why is that? What makes those conversations difficult? Is it fear? Is it a realization that our life is finite and our time on this planet comes to an end? Well, we avoid talking a bit, but we have to realize that death is part of life. We all see death as an end, but it doesn't really have to be. The universe is energy, and everything in nature gets recycled. So why should human death be any different? The great philosopher Seneca once said that a man lives badly who does not know how to die well. And of course, in his time, dying well may have meant different things. But today, I would put to you that dying well means preserving life, passing it on. Kira lived a good life. And when her parents agreed to donation, they taught us the ultimate lesson, that life must go on. And this is something that we all collectively can do. So I'd make a plea to all of you tonight, when you go home, start having those conversations that you never have. Start speaking those words. It's simple. Well, you can say to me, what difference does one make? I can tell you, a huge one. A simple tick on your driver license saves 8 lives. And if you still don't believe me, I want you to consider the following figures. In 2023, according to the Council of Europe Transplants newsletter, 7,000 patients died waiting for a transplant. That is 19 patients a day. In contrast, in the current conflict in Ukraine, the United Nations Office for High Commissioner for Human Rights confirmed that 14 civilians died daily. Let that think for a second. No war zone, 19 patients died daily. So this is something we can all do about. Think about what legacy you want to leave behind and start having those unspoken conversations. But Kira's story doesn't end here, because when her parents agreed to donate, they didn't just change their lives. They changed someone else's life. Someone whose life hung by a thread. So let me tell you a story about Max. Max was a 9-year-old boy who lived a normal life. One day, he noticed that he could not keep up pace with his father going to the local shops. A simple walk became like running a marathon. He started to lose his breath, he became unwell, and needed an ambulance to take him to the hospital. His heart was failing. And thus began 196 days waiting for a heart transplant. 196 days waiting for an organ that may never come. A 9-year-old boy with life on pause, hanging by a thread. And this is where Kira and Max's stories intersect, because when Kira died and her family agreed to donation, Kira's heart saved Max's life. Max was lucky, but many children like him are not. In fact, thousands of adults are not. Why? Simply because there are not enough organs to fulfill the growing demand for transplantation. And this is something that we can all should do and should start doing something about. According to the same Council of Europe transplant newsletter, in 2023, 56,000 patients joined the transplant list. That is 6 patients an hour. Since we've been here this morning, 54 patients joined the list. If you want to look in a different way, 1 jet a day full of patients going to the transplant list. When Max recovered after his transplant, he wrote a letter. And he wrote a letter to Kira's parents. Now, this is a letter that very few adults start to write. How do you convey your emotions, your gratitude to someone you've never met, who made a decision in their darkest time of their lives that you should live when they lost someone they love? So that's why we can all start doing something about. But that letter is the most difficult one to write, and often remains unwritten because of guilt, fear, or respect to the donor family's privacy. But that letter brings joy and happiness to the family that in their darkest hour, they made the decision, the right decision, that life must go on. And in fact, not one life, but many. But Max did one more thing. He met Kira's family. He let them listen to her heart beating inside his chest. He brought them joy that she lived on, and they made the right decision that fateful night. Max's story doesn't end here either, because Max and his family decided that enough is enough. No more children should die waiting for an organ. So they started campaigning for organ donation. Stars aligned, and for once politicians listened. The campaign grew, gained pace, and eventually the law in the United Kingdom where Max and Kira lived changed, allowing every citizen to be considered as a potential donor, simplifying the process, unless they specifically said they do not want to become a donor. All of a sudden, those unspoken words became spoken. The voices of many were heard, and everything changed in a second. At the bequest of Max, the law became known as Max and Kira's law. 2 children who had the courage to speak the unspoken, that have changed the world forever. Now, there is a third story in there, and this is my story. I, like many transplant professionals working in transplantation, we find ourselves at the borderline between death and life, silent witnesses to the tragedy and majesty of life. We carry with us those difficult conversations of joy, grief, loss, hope, and reassurance that for one life to go on, we also know that one life must end. Every day, we witness dying and living, joy and grief, and we carry on, fulfilling the donor's wishes and giving every patient the chance of a life-saving transplant. No matter how difficult and emotionally charged that is, we must carry on because there's a next patient waiting. Our professional lives are really a roller coaster of emotions, and we also carry our own written letters to the donor for their final gift, to their families for their heroic decision in the dark time in their lives, to those patients we cannot save or we could not save. We carry them in our hearts and our minds. And finally, to those who live life well because someone, somewhere, made a decision that you should live on. Now, when I was a little child, not child, a boy, I usually went with my father to his lab. He was a very inquisitive mind. He liked to fix things for his fellow human beings. So everything needed to have a solution. Every problem had a solution. When we went to the lab, it was playtime. We mixed different chemical solutions, changing colors, yellow, green, blue, red, whatever. I was in awe. I think secretly he tried me to convince to follow in his career pathway, but I slightly disappointed him and went to medicine. Looking back, I know it was now more than child's play. It was about instilling courage, instilling intuition, instilling a way to look into problems, to fix the problems, asking and answering the difficult questions, making a difference. And my way of making a difference is to ensure that no donated organ gets wasted. This is our global responsibility, and this is my mission. And we have now great ways of doing that. We get a better understanding how the organs work. We design better algorithms to match donor and recipients so we can make sure that the right organ goes to the right recipient. We also use advanced technology that allows us to keep organs outside the human body for a long time, to understand how they work, to see what damage they've sustained during the death process, and how we can repair that. So when we transplant them, they function well. And it is really a privilege to be, even for a short time, the caretaker of an organ that very soon will change someone's life forever. But today, it's not about Kira, nor Max, and most definitely not about me. It is about you. You can be part of that magic three and make a difference. I would like you to reflect on these three stories that talk about the many words unspoken in transplantation, words that bring humanity's rawest emotions. What letters have you not written? What words have you not spoken? So I would say to you that now it's time to start having that conversation. Get your pens out, get to your computers, write those letters. Speak those words to your loved ones and think about what legacy do you want to live behind? What life you want to live? Kira and Max's story didn't change the world because they were silent. Quite the opposite. They changed the world because their family dared to ask the right questions, voice the unspoken. Imagine for a second How many lives, like Max's, could be saved if we all do the same? Because the words we leave unspoken have the power to change lives. Thank you.